record, we're in business. Oh, good point. Oh, there's somebody just joined. There's Crystal. Well, she can always work from the, she can always work from the recording if she doesn't show up.
Oh, you hear us?
Do you hear me?
Ronnie, you're muted.
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Yes?
There we go.
Great. So we have Ronnie, Jenny is here in the room, Dominic, myself, also in the room is Tom. Crystal, I see you, you can hear us, correct? And then, I've not joined yet. So our agenda this evening, couple of things that we need to tie up to send to the full council. The formula retail law, Crystal needed to update some code relating to putting that in place. So Crystal, you just want to talk to us about that?
Yes, because we are having essentially all businesses now put in for that certification and to get a essentially a permit from it. I need to update, we need to make sure that all businesses are on notice, not just formula retail businesses, which means that there needs to be another section of the code updated. The only delay on my side was trying to figure out which section of the zoning code is the best place for it. I'm thinking the supplemental regulations for non-residential buildings is where I'm going to put it. But that is something I'm working on, and my plan is to get that over to the council for the informal meeting.
You're looking at something for non-residential buildings.
Yes. Yeah, there's a code provision already for supplementary regulations in the zoning code for non-residential buildings. So that's where I'm thinking it would make sense to put it where commercial businesses would be on notice, but I'm just making sure. I'm doing a double check.
So we haven't had any changes to that. Does anyone have any questions about that? I think we were finished with it. Then the filming law, we pended that last time. We had some input from community where they wanted to relook at it. At this point, based on the discussion last time, Crystal and I updated this. Crystal, it's in the section relating to still phones, correct?
Sorry, I made the mistake of muting myself again. Yes, I'm trying to see exactly where it was, but what we did is we just updated it so the still photography goes from a crew of 2 to a crew of 3. That includes the lighting person. I can't think of the name that the term that we put in there.
So it's under 132(3)(b), where we added where a crew of 3 or more, when such crew includes a light technician is engaged as defined, etc. So, hi Alex, we're just talking about the phone law.
Say again?
We're just talking about the phone law.
Oh,
So we added that, the intent here being, just to identify those engaged in still photography in a professional shoot, and this is in public space where it might has the potential to be intrusive or disruptive. So therefore they would have to have a permit. But it would not impact anyone. You had 3 people taking photographs, but you've no lighting technician. You're not setting up, equipment and so forth. that would be fine, that would not require a permit. The lighting technician is what we added into the still photography piece. So what I would like to do is have this go to the full council, for discussion. And Alex, I know you and I had emailed, I think yesterday.
Yeah.
Did you have any input on this version of it?
So I thought that the edits were good and I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in. The only question that I had was, why would that be the choice to apply that to stills and not video as well? Why not apply that, as far as the crew? Yeah, because I think, it just sort of stands to reason, if it's being not invasive, but it's being, has the potential to be interrupted, to be able to interrupt, businesses or residents alike. I just think it would make sense to apply both to video and still shoot.
So I think the short answer to that is that when this was written without still photography being included, and then we started thinking about it, put this in, and then the issue of, well, how do you differentiate between somebody just taking a photograph and yada yada, and then when we, in our last discussion, thought adding the lighting piece would address that.
Yeah.
But there were no questions on how we were defining video. I can only think that, the people were assuming that if you're doing video, you probably have a lighting crew as well. But I don't know, I mean,
Necessarily.
yeah, I mean, there were no issues with that written for the filmography.
So right now, the film is, if you do 2 or more, you need a permit.
Excuse me?
To film, it's 2 or more, you need a permit.
It doesn't go into the size of the crew, does it, Crystal?
I didn't think it did for film. No, I'm not. And I'm double checking here. And I'm not seeing that we did get into the size of the crew for filming.
It's about this is for commercial purposes on any kind of public property, etc.
Right.
And you have to apply for and obtain a permit. We excluded family or personal use. I mean, if people want to revisit that some more, I've been talking about it for a year now.
No, I mean, if there's no number on the crew, then,
There was
because,
never any discussion of the crew size for film.
okay.
Why don't we just add it for both and call it a day and vote on it?
I think that is.
So,
Yeah, I think
Kristen, did you get that recommendation that we should modify this to include the crew language for video and for still photography?
You mean the crew size, right? Because for the crew language for still photography, what we did is we made it contingent on using a light technician. I think for filming, it's going to be a little bit different because you're not necessarily, it's, between person having, an actual light technician versus just having cameras on. So are you looking at just the size, like a crew of 3 or more, period?
Yes.
Okay.
The rationale of that, I mean, I'm not the original author of this, I think it was Theo, wasn't it?
Well, because instead of so with a
So-
photographer, right, you need a lighting, but with video, you could have a sound person, right, with a boom mic and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe,
Let's just say,
The whole thing about the still photography was, how do we make it so that just a couple of people taking photographs don't have to get a permit?
right,
And so, absent any other input, I was thinking and talking to Crystal, well, if you're doing still photography and you have, it's a professional shoot, you've got a couple of people, plus you've got equipment, you're setting things up, you're blocking the sidewalk, that would be a situation where we might want to permit.
Yeah.
And that was the whole rationale, but
Yes.
I think, like, at this point, just saying, oh, well, let's just throw it into the video as well, without thinking about it, there's probably a reason why Theo didn't write it that way, right?
This actually came from Michael. Michael had initially, Michael Hoffman had initially recommended this and he had gathered it from other municipalities, for the city.
But Theo was also involved in this,
Yeah,
this is professional,
Modification, yeah.
yeah.
I think that if we say crew because crew could be hair and makeup, it could be lighting, it could be anything. I think we just say a crew of 3 or more and we're safe for both.
You're not safe for photography. The reason you're not safe for photography is that you could easily have 3 people just taking photographs without any other equipment. You can call them a crew. And then they have to get a permit, as opposed to the reason the lighting piece was put in was to identify a situation with still photography that has the potential to be disruptive in a public place.
And it steps it up to more of a commercial level when you use them.
It's all about commercial.
Right.
Well, hair and makeup is also commercial.
Excuse me?
Hair and makeup would also be commercial.
I'm talking about commercial films, not whether or not hair and makeup is commercial. And the whole purpose of this was to put in a permit situation to collect revenue from people doing commercial films. And we have still photography in the city of Hudson and using Hudson as part of a commercial venture. And so we're going to collect fees for that. And that's as simple as it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
So what's our group of 3 or more people? Like, can we, is it the word crew that's?
No, I just would like to understand why that wasn't part of the original way it was written. Whoever wrote it probably had a good reason. Because the 2 people mostly involved in this, but they're both gone, but they both knew a thing or two about visual arts and about film.
I went to a visual arts school in
I know
Tanya.
you did, I know you did, what I'm saying is, without going back and asking them why they did it the way they did it, I suspect they had abuse, that's all I'm saying. And so I can give Theo a call, see if he remembers, he probably won't want to talk about it. But, I mean, you know, let me just look into it, and then we will bring it to the council. I'm fine with saying for the video piece, a crew of 3 or more, that's fine. But for the still photography, I think it should keep in the lighting piece.
yeah, I mean, it makes sense again, because we're trying to hit that sweet spot, right?
Right.
We don't want to be so restrictive that people choose not to come here
Yeah.
and film.
Yeah.
And do still shoots as well, but also we obviously don't want a situation where crews get so large that they're being, you know, disruptive to the flow of traffic, pedestrians, homes and
Right.
residents. So it's just, I still think, you know, finding that exact number, finding that sweet spot for, you know, making sure that that's you know, where we want to be.
Okay. So are we agree, Ronnie, do you have any input on this?
No, but I see there's a input from Ron. He's got his hand raised.
Chris.
Sorry, I'm trying to get back to
I got it.
my screen.
Acknowledge it.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Ronald.
yes, go ahead, Ron.
Yes, it's Matt McGee. I was wanting to speak to this. I have an interest in photography, you know, I like to record historic buildings and things. And you know, it doesn't hurt to have someone watching your back. And I sort of think that 3 is kind of narrow. Maybe you should ask for 4, because 3 people doing a shoot is not a crowd. 4 starts to be, maybe 5, but you know, 3 is not enough people doing something that should be that disruptive.
Matt, are you talking about video or are you talking about still photography?
I'm talking about still photography and frankly, or video, but still in particular.
So actually, Matt, when I made that revision, the size of the crew was not relevant. There was a lot of discussion last time that it should be at least 3 people. But the reason I made that revision was to put in place the physical business of setting up lights takes space. It's not really
Okay,
about,
well, that, yes, lighting I never do, ever,
it's really-
indoors or out.
It has to include a lighting technician, because that's the thing that's really driving the fact that you need a permit. The size of the booth, quite honestly, doesn't really matter. The issue is if you have a lighting technician, you need a permit. And maybe that's what we do. Maybe we just change it to still photography where they are using a lighting technician, you need a permit. And then video,
Same.
video of, well, no, we could not necessarily. With video, you might want to say approve 3 or more. Yeah. And then leave it at that. That sound reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, they could be, they could be operating large equipment, that's not necessarily lighting, but.
Exactly.
So I think
So we don't-
sliders.
we don't specify.
Parts, yeah.
Yeah, we don't just specify.
It also depends on the kind of still photography you're doing. You could have a crazy old Leica from the 1800s and you're shoving glass plates into it and you're taking up half the sidewalk. I mean, seriously, I have friends who do
I've seen
that.
at least 60 people do that this week in Nelson.
Margaret, it's like,
Have different hobbies.
no, I'm serious, but everybody laughs at me every time I open my mouth. It's crazy. Anyway, whatever. I think it doesn't, specifying lighting doesn't mean that, I just don't get it.
Like, anyone else want to revise the definition for still photography, Ronnie?
Cause I'm gonna.
I-
microphone off.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Ronald, if you're done speaking, do you mind,
Yes, thank you, I
muting yourself?
will.
Yep,
I
sorry.
think I am, yeah, thanks.
Or Matt, I mean. I think it's still a good idea to try to get an input from Theo if possible. I don't know if he's receptive to that. I know he's in the business and he could probably weigh in a lot more than I could. In my mind, it makes sense why you would, as far as still photography, you would consider lighting to be the breaking point because you can have multiple people with still photography things and it just kind of blends in because that is a type of photography too, like crowd photography, I think it's called, or something like that. Like you're just walking about taking pictures. It's not necessarily something that is disruptive, but obviously when you have lighting, it's all about like where the light is, that requires people to be cordoned off and so on and so forth. That it's more of a static environment. So I can see why that could be the breaking point, but like I said, I'm not in the profession. I don't know enough about it to, in my mind, what you guys have worked towards with the input from the business community, I feel like is pretty good.
Dominic,
Better than pretty good.
No, the only thing is does the lighting then kick in the identification of a commercial, right? A commercial fit
No,
film, right?
No.
Because,
the whole thing has to be commercial to begin with. And then it also has to have a lighting component to require a permit.
no, but I'm saying, okay, so if you have 3 people and you use the lighting, right? So is that, then you need a permit?
Yes,
But that's right, so if you have 3 people that don't use the lighting, you need a permit.
No.
So what you're saying is then, using the lighting does facilitate the need for the permit.
right, but because of what Ronnie just said, that you have to set up this equipment, you're coordinating an area of, and as I think you described it as a static environment. It's the fact that it has the potential for disruption.
Right, I mean,
That's a simple.
from my understanding, and Jenny, you might know better, is sometimes they use big umbrella things and,
Yeah,
different things.
Sometimes, and
Yeah.
other times there are handheld things that people use that
Yeah.
are very portable and you can move right out of somebody's way. So that's, to me, I don't get why the lighting is a thing. And the lighting, you could be using that in video too. So I don't really, and it depends, you could be filming on your phone and using lighting, I don't know. I think if you're going to bring up equipment, maybe it's equipment that is taking up space. I don't know. I mean, or maybe just leave it out.
Can I maybe offer a different course, and maybe this is for Crystal to weigh in on if she can hear? Does it make sense
Sorry, speak up.
for Crystal to hear, maybe weighing in on this, maybe as a different course of action? does it make sense to, within the definitions, define what crew means and then list some of those common functions
Crystal, are you moving that?
within crew
And
to
I was
distinguish that?
actually, I'm sorry, and I was actually just making a note on that, that maybe a way to solve this is putting in some definitions.
Define
To help.
crew, those involved in the production who are not appearing as subjects in the shoot. And then maybe list some of the common, commonly referred to but not limited to functions that would be part of the crew. And then you would be able to, almost like what we're doing with the formula business, like a few different criteria. If you match enough of these, then you're now considered a commercial shoot, right? With the crew definitions,
Okay, so Crystal, is that something that you can work on?
because then you get
Yeah.
matched.
Into, the informal, and we can't vote on it, in the formal because it's a local law, correct, so I have to wait, but I would like to move it on.
Yeah.
So Alex, you came in a couple of minutes after we discussed retail, so I'll just summary on that. Crystal is updating the section of the code relating to non-residential commercial properties. That's the only thing that needs to be done, and that will be moving forward to,
Great.
the councils for August.
Did we just lose them?
Yeah, it looks like they disconnected. Margaret's still on there. I wonder if Tom just accidentally hit something. There we go.
They're back. Okay.
Tom, you guys are muted over there.
You got.
Yep.
Are we unmuted now?
We're
Can you
Yes.
hear? So on the agenda this evening, I added short-term rentals. The reason for this, well, there are two reasons, but the primary one is that New York State has recently passed through Assembly and Senate legislation relating to short-term rentals. And in looking at it, what we have in Hudson is not very well aligned. In fact, it's not aligned with what the state is now defining in terms of short-term rentals. So it's, I think the governor, I think, have not yet signed it, but some version of this is probably going to be law very soon. And so I think in light of that, I wanted to start the discussion by circulating to everyone the law that was passed. Also the section of our code that talks about short-term rentals, and some correspondence that I had with Michelle. Her office is responsible for looking at implementing and enforcing the rules we have regarding short-term rentals. So I'd asked her some questions. In reviewing the law, the thing that the most, first and foremost, all as defined by the New York State, all short-term rentals will have to be registered with the state. And their definition of short-term rental includes renting of a room in one's home. We do not define it that way. Our definition of a short-term rental unit requires that the unit have a separate entrance. So just in the basic definition of short-term rental, there's a difference there. Now, the state legislation allows municipalities to come up with their own rules and regulations. If they want to ban STRs altogether, they can. They can come up with whatever version of how they want to manage short-term rentals as they want. So that part's fine. However, one of the things that I think is possibly very good about the New York State law is that it is developing a registry. And it is putting a lot of responsibility on advertising platforms like Vrbo and Airbnb, that they have to verify that what they are posting is actually registered and legit, and that the person posting it either owns what they are posting, or they have written permission from their landlord to rent out their apartment and so on. So one of the things about that that's potentially very useful for municipalities is that these reports will be going to the state. The state will have a registry. The data in the registry, which includes things like how many days the unit was rented, how much it cost, what the taxes are and so forth. That registry information could be very useful to us. But if our definition of short-term rental and the state's definition are not in line, then we might have difficulty using the data. I think I'd like to get more information on how that registry would work. At the moment, when I reached out to Michelle for information, we have 62 sites. They may have more than one unit, 62 sites that are registered with 13 in process. Registration fee is fairly low. It's $100 plus 25 per bedroom and so forth. Identifying unregistered STRs, they are using software called LodgingGov. So this is where we have a state registry that will replace that aspect. Scrubs websites for where short-term rentals, etc. So basically, this is doing the work of the state. New York's going to require them to report. The state will have the information. We can look at the registry. There'll be even online ability to look things up. I think that this is probably a very cumbersome process. And one thing, you know, when I was looking at this, given the number and how much revenue is likely coming in from that, it wouldn't surprise me if we're barely breaking even on compliance versus revenue. But I don't have numbers on that. That's something I kind of
Fine versus revenue.
compliance
Clients.
versus. So, you know, I think if we look at it and we see how much time and effort it's costing us for the sake of 70 odd short-term rentals, I think that's a question that we should be thinking about. And particularly if there's more efficient ways. Yes, Tom?
Yeah, no, I agree, it's a more efficient way to do that. I don't know if Michelle made this, I didn't read it, I did read it, she didn't make this clear. We're at the stage where we're already sending out letters to all the ones who haven't been compliant. And start, if you looked at the
The fines?
fines.
Yes, I looked at that section.
Considerable.
Well, you see, I think that's something also that we ought to be looking at because the fines are like way out of line with anything New York State is putting in place. One of them,
More or less,
much more.
yeah.
I mean, it's, I think one of them, it's the greater of all of the revenue you've gotten while you were unregistered or 3,000 per quarter that you were posting as being available. And it's the greater of those two. I think that's a bit much.
It may be, but recall, and Dominic was on the council, we were way ahead of the curve in terms of creating anything.
Right,
So I agree that it's great. Some of it, what the state's demanding is even tougher,
it's much
which is
tougher.
great.
Yeah, much tougher.
Because as you may recall, even if you weren't in council, that we had tons of pushback, mostly by absentee owners. So I think the states, and I'm glad you've sort of started figuring out what's different between theirs and ours. I do see one problem though, perhaps when that registry happens, making sure that we identify what's truly Hudson or not, because the state is probably not.
It has the addresses.
Yeah, but 12524, it's not just.
Yeah, but if you have a street address.
Sure, you're right. We
Yeah, street address.
So that's something
We
we
will
would
be
have.
able to
You're
identify
right.
where they are,
That's correct.
because they have to have exact address.
Yeah. And I assume they have something about LLCs too.
Yeah, well, the address is the address, no, that is, going to, I don't know how they identify the owner when it's an LLC, but the address has to be addressed for the unit that is being rented.
That's great.
So that's a good,
That's all good.
so my main intention this evening was to bring this up, say, look, we've got this law out there, let's start looking at it and thinking about it. I'm gonna be meeting, Michelle couldn't make it tonight. Some of the other things that I asked her about, how often they get complaints. She very rarely gets complaints. And I don't, Craig also reported that he doesn't get any complaints.
That changed a lot if we put in the law. Because early, there was a lot more of these absentee owners. So you had houses that were basically party houses, so that
Right.
really diminished the complaints.
But, I mean, you know, one of the things I was wondering was on the issue of not being registered, is that a way that you identify something unregistered? And then the other scenario, compliance example that I gave her was, we have a regulation that you cannot rent your property out for more, if you are a part-time person. You have to be here for at least, I think, 50 days of the year, and you can't rent it out for more than 60, right? And I'm thinking, how would anybody know whether I rented it for 60 or 80? How would you know it?
Well, that was one of the lodging regs told us they would give us that information, and they weren't able to.
Right,
So that's disappointing.
yeah.
But it was fairly arbitrary, too.
Right. So, I mean, that's an area I think, you know, for, and I was thinking the only way that this would come up is if the next door neighbor complained. That this person's always renting out their house, but they don't get any complaints, so obviously that's not getting. So I just think there are some things in here that, you know, when I meet with Michelle, maybe we could, particularly with, in light of the new information, the new registry information, we may be able to make this easier to do and try to align some of our definitions of the state. And I really do think we need to discuss the penalties, because honestly, that high, you're never gonna get anybody to come forward and register. If they've been not registered even for 2 months, you're gonna take everything I got and most of it. So I think it's a disincentive for people to cooperate, to be honest.
And you might want to match it with the state anyway, because it could be conflicting, because the way Hudson's, you know, so if it's a matching,
Right.
you know, with the state's.
So again, we had no knowledge.
Yeah.
The other thing in the law, if it goes, if it's signed as is, municipal differentiates between municipalities of over 1 million and less than 1 million. So for our category, if we have a registry in place before the law is signed, we can continue to have a registry. But once the bill goes into effect, no new local registries are to be developed. They will allow municipalities that already have one to continue. I'm not sure why it's written that way. It seems a bit strange. But they do have that in there in the provision. So we do have a registry.
Sounds like they were warning us. We didn't have it.
I think they don't want, I think they would prefer to have the single source recognition, is what I think. But at any rate, so I think this is something that, I'd like this committee to take up. Ronnie, do you have any comments on this?
Really, not really a comment. I was really more curious about this whole process, about why we haven't been able to compel Airbnb to just give us this data instead of having to rely on outside vendors, municipalities to collect it. Because, I mean, this gig system, like, Uber has to like verify that a person has the right license and the right insurance and everything like that before they even allow the person to operate. And it's just a curiosity, Crystal. Do you know if
Ronnie, I'm having trouble hearing this evening, but I'm not sure I got your question. The law places a great deal of emphasis on, which is a good thing, on these platforms that charge fees to advertise properties and do bookings. The onus is on them now to verify that the person listing is a legitimate listing, that they are registered with the state, that they own the property. If they are a tenant, that they have written permission from their landlord. So the state is pushing all of that responsibility onto those booking sites.
Oh, I must have missed that. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this? I will meet with Michelle. I'll get more information. We can discuss next month. And hopefully I'd like to just finesse it a little bit, make it streamlined, yes?
The only question that I had in looking at the correspondence with Michelle, did she give any indication, or are they including this in their analysis?
Did you speak up?
Any indication, or have they included in their analysis the number of units or rooms that have, since this law was passed, have gone from short-term rentals to long-term rentals?
That was very, no, there's some of that.
I can tell you one.
What happened a lot was people sold their absentees, sold their buildings. And there are 2 buildings just within, 6 of where I live that became full-time owners.
Oh, great.
And granted, people say, well, that was a much higher price because it's been that, but so what? They're still middle-class owners. They're not rich people.
Right.
Because rich people stayed in the city, right? But, you know, there's a difference between what you can afford here and what you could afford in, say, Brooklyn. In fact, both of them, I think, came from Brooklyn, where $600,000 doesn't get you much, but here you have a very nice.
Yeah, of course. No, I was just interested.
There are some things like that that I,
Yeah.
when I meet with Michelle, those are some of the questions I want.
That is, yeah, no, I would like to know, I know a number who then just went to full-time rentals
Mhm.
and maybe kept one,
As a short term.
short-term rental.
Okay. Yeah. That would be good to know because, you know, Heather, the treasurer did report that there's been a drop off and obviously the tax revenue, lodging tax revenue that's been collected. And it would just be interesting to see if that's because there's still the same number, but people aren't registering or have they actually converted from short-term to long-term rentals? And that's why the lodging tax revenue is down. Or are we having fewer overnight stays in the city, which is obviously, you know, more of concerns in the business community.
I can tell you from just the people I know, and I know 5 or 6 people who have had there are so many less people coming and staying in Airbnbs. I think it's out of fashion, to be honest. And we have so many more places that are hotels and we got more coming.
Yeah.
I don't think that this is gonna be as big a concern as it has been in the past.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the public on this? Okay, so I believe that brings us to new business. And I know that, Dominic and Tom, they had some new business to pick up. So Dominic, do you want to start that?
Sure, yeah, sure, that'd be great. So, I don't know what information you looked into, Tom, but I wanted to start the discussion and research on the good cause eviction, law. I know Troy is working on their version. And I just, spoke to Poughkeepsie, today. And, you know, they passed their version, but, so I'm looking at what that process was because they had to do a vacancy, study. So I know in the past that we weren't really eligible for that vacancy because of the number. We didn't meet that criteria for a vacancy study. I think, right, Tom, we didn't.
Well, it was also very difficult to do. They
Right.
changed the rules about how you do the vacancy study. If the
Yeah.
landlord doesn't answer, you can just assume.
That's
That's not the way it was. Kingston got challenged. Crystal, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kingston got challenged because they included a lot of buildings where they didn't get participation by the landlord. They got challenged, they got defeated. This time they're saying you don't have to get landlord cooperation on how many units are in a building.
Right, so another thing is, so I also asked Michelle to see what data she has to see, because, and Crystal, maybe, you know a little bit about the law too, is that how many of the properties are going to be affected in the city of Hudson? Because, no new development is going to be affected. It's not going to be applied to, so my understanding is anything prior to 2008, I think.
Yeah.
And.
Yes, 8 or 9.
Right, so, and so many units, and if you did major construction or renovations to those units, they might not be eligible. So what's gonna be eligible for the property, for tenants, it's gonna be maybe even shrunk even lower, depending on what our property and our real estate looks like for that law. So, before we, dive into the good cause eviction, I think we should research it, figure out where it's gonna benefit our community. Because there's gonna be, I think, more property not eligible under good cause than is the way I read the law, right now. So that's where I think.
Another thing that you and I talked about this briefly, when you look at the tax rolls, when you look at the property ownership in Hudson, it's very, very often listed as an LLC. And so since the law is based upon property owners or landlords who have 10 or more units, it's very difficult to discern from. It's really the same owner, and ways that I have done it in the past is by looking at who the contact person is And then you can identify, oh, I have the same contract, because you'll see street number 123, ABC Road. And then LLC, and then the next one will be
Mhm.
1547 ABC Road, LLC, and then they'll all be the same person. So that's, again, as we look at things like this and what the benefit is, I agree with you, we need to see how it will benefit our community. We also need to look at what will it cost us in effort to do this, and does it make sense?
What I would hope, Crystal, you could do is figure, I know there's a lot of opt-in and we can determine a lot of the, dimensions of this law. So I'm hoping you can define for us what exactly they are. For example, how many units? That in the original, it was, I believe, 6 or 4, but 10, it was 10? But now we can pick our own. And of course, the whole project is about opting in. We don't have to do it at all, obviously. So if you can figure out. No, I'm not getting anything right now. Oh, oh, I was referring to, yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
go through and
Yep.
outline which of the provisions the city is gonna be able to tweak, and just like number of units is absolutely one of them.
Exactly. Yeah, some reason, yeah, I don't know why the volume is so low. Let me, what?
It looks
No.
like you guys may have lost the owl connection.
Oh, okay. That is what happened.
We lost the owl.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
Can you try again, Crystal?
Yeah, I can hear you guys now, and I can see everyone now.
Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, there are various provisions of the state law that the city absolutely can change. Number of units is absolutely one of them. So I can go through and bullet point what can be customized out of this for the city to start evaluating.
Perfect.
So Dominic, is this something that you'd like to take on?
Sure, what? Tom, you want to help me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What was new business? Does anyone else have new business? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So can we have a motion to adjourn?
I made that motion.
Second,
Jenny?
Jenny seconds. And thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yay.